I'm Eric from Longbox Review.
I'm Peter from the Daily Rios, and this is episode 7 of Eric and Peter's Legion Project Podcast.
Hello and welcome to, as Peter just said, episode 7 of the Legion Project Podcast. Hey, Peter, how you doing?
Hey, Eric, how are you?
Good, good. Although, well, I shouldn't say that because as we're recording this, I'm feeling a bit under the weather. Again, it seems like every time we get together, I'm not feeling my best, Peter. What's going on with that?
What does that say about?
I know.
About you?
Nothing. Nothing at all. I'm not trying to imply anything whatsoever.
Look, we're 7 episodes in. We can't stop now.
I know, and that's lucky number 7 too.
Yeah,
as they say. I don't know. Are you?
Nah. I know exactly what you're saying. Nah.
You're not superstitious like that?
No. Although I do tend to think that odd numbers are better than even numbers, but whatever. That's I don't give much thought or credence to that. So whatever.
That's funny. I like odd numbers better too.
Yeah.
Oh, those little things that we have in common that I find out. It's funny. Not just the Legion, folks.
That's right. So we're back to talk about another issue, and as always, we should thank our theme song composer, Row Music. That theme song is called Lost City, which you can find in our show note links, whether you're looking at my page or Eric's page. We will put links to the Twitter, links to the YouTube. Great theme song to kick us off on our discussions every episode.
Yeah, the theme song really kind of pumps me up to talk about Legion stuff, so it's a good choice.
Good.
Peter, should we get? We have some feedback. Should we jump to that real quick before we get into the issue?
Let's do that. Yeah.
All right. So we have an email from Chris again, talking about episode 6, our discussion about issue 6. I'm just going to summarize a few things here, and then if there's anything here that I missed, Peter, please jump in.
Okay.
So Chris says. Hey guys, catching up on listening with episode 6. Because we always talk about the covers, Peter, and so he's mimicking our format a little bit here because he's talking about the covers. He says usually I'm a Tales cover guy for the first 5 issues, anyways, but this time the Baxter cover takes the win, and I'm sure we'll talk about that too here very shortly. He continues that in this issue. He says the issue 6 is simply a gap. It's very clear that it's simply a gap filler. They repeat the same Mech versus Ayla battle we just saw previously in the Eye for an Eye story, and I think we had talked about that too in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
At least I remember having that same thought.
Yep.
And he also reiterates that he looks at the issue as the actual conclusion to that storyline, and I would agree with that. He says also the plot of Lightning Lord and the Legion of Supervillains is there to show how far Mech has gone in his delusions of grandeur. And it's up to Ayla, Lightning Lass, to find herself and take down her brother, which actually concludes issue 6, of course, yeah. On the art front, because we talked a little bit about Joe Orlando's art,
mm-hmm.
Chris says Joe Orlando's touch is both interesting to downright strange. Which I also kind of thought too. His architecture is weird at times, and at certain points he appears to put little or no effort into the set pieces. Page 23, Winath is drawn like the Smurf village, which on the top panel, which I thought that was very interesting. Did you get the same vibe from that?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't have connected Smurf Village, but I find that viewpoint really interesting. And he also touches on the facial close-ups of the Legionnaires. I had the same reaction. Overall, he says, I know you guys felt it was a filler episode or filler issue, but I found it quite refreshing to break back into a single one-and-done issue after that arc. And that's kind of Paul Levitz's modus operandi, right? He basically does that every once in a while.
Yeah, he knows how to pace a title. Especially, I mean, he's been working on this for how long by now?
Right. It's always good for us to just kind of take a breather after, a longish arc where we have a lot of things going on. And now with this next, or this particular issue, I think we're kind of jumping back into that. So a nice eye for an eye arc, take a little breather. Now we're jumping back into some other good stuff here. And Chris also says something about Invisible Kid, but I want to touch on that a little bit later. So.
Oh, okay. I had that to talk about. Okay, we'll do that later. I want to follow up on an older email from Mike Atchison. Because I forgot to respond to part of the question, which I don't think we read, which I was going to answer through email, and so hopefully he's still listening. And he asks, is there any particular order that I should read the Legion of Superheroes run that began in 1989, the Legion run that also began in 89, the one with all the not the abbreviation, but the acronym, and the Legionnaires run that began in 1993. Are they all interconnected? Thanks once again for a great podcast. So he's talking about the 5 years later Legion run, and then the Legion run that spun out of Invasion, and then the Legionnaires run, which came out shortly prior to 0 Hour. And I mean, if you want to be a real hard continuity nut like me, I would read the Legion run that came out of Invasion, the one with Vril Dox and Lobo and Lady Quark, because it doesn't necessarily echo too much with the other Legion titles at that time. There might be one or two things, a few things here and there, but nothing major, and certainly no crossover stuff that I can remember. So then you can read the 5 years later run, which is the 1989 Legion of Superheroes title. But then you kind of have to flip-flop back and forth, I think, once Legionnaire starts, after the Terror Mosaic storyline wraps up, right about a year prior to 0 Hour, because some of that stuff does flip-flop. And I think once 0 Hour hits, I think those two titles do flip-flop. Maybe not in like an interconnected way, but there are things that echo back and forth, if I remember right. But that would be the order I would choose.
Yeah, other than starting with the Legion series, I would agree with you. Because that series was, while entertaining, and I did not read all of it, I will admit, but I did enjoy like the first couple of years of that. But it was more of a Legion adjacent title.
Oh, sure.
Set in the 20th century. But obvious connections to the Legion. So if you're a completist, of course, yes, like you say, Peter, that's the way to go.
Right.
Although I always liked to read. Let me ask you this, Peter. When you say start with this and then do this, are you talking about reading the entire run of each title? So start with Legion, then move to Legion 89, then move to Legionnaires, or kind of go back and forth at some point, like you were saying?
I think I would just read the Legion title first, because I don't think it ever really touched into the 5 years later. I mean, there might be some allusions here and there, and certainly with a couple characters, but I think you could read that and just get it out of the way, because you're right. Like, especially by the end, it kind of just peters out. But and then you have to go, oh, should I read the Rebels series that followed right after that? Because that was a continuation of that series. But then once you get to Legion of Superheroes, the 5 years later run, once they discover the younger Legionnaires team, which then spins off into Legionnaires, I would read it in the order that they were released on the shelves.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when they get the SW6 batch, when they get to that storyline, yeah, it becomes, I don't know, I think you perhaps might even be a little lost if you don't read some Legionnaires issues at the same time. Yeah, so that's what I meant about just flip-flopping back. Now, once 0 Hour hits, I'm pretty sure both those titles did sort of flip-flop. There was even a time when they had those number triangles, I believe, just like the old Superman books, I think. But then once you get past a certain point, beyond 0 Hour, I stopped reading, so I don't even know what happens. I think I was in the same boat. Because I dropped Legionnaires at issue 12, but continued on with the Legion 89 series until it was done. So there's a huge gap there that I need to fill. Yeah. Like I said, we'll get there. We'll get there in a bunch of years. I mean, we have a killer schedule. We're putting out episodes, right? We're so on top of it. I know, right? I just one more point on that, Peter. Listening to you talk about all these different Legion titles at that time and what to read and how to read, it just kind of struck me just now that we had a veritable golden age of Legion time. Especially compared to now, where we have nothing. Well, I shouldn't say nothing. We have these tiny slivers of appearances here and there. Yeah. But, we don't even have a main Legion book. So I look very fondly back on those days when we had all those titles being produced. Yeah. Well, I'm sort of jumping your notes here, but what you have something that you put down about the Black Hammer universe? The Quantum Age? Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Because so this is, Black Hammer is doing another spin-off. I think it's supposed to be an ongoing series, not a limited series like they've had a couple of those. But the vibe of this, Peter, the Quantum Age, looks like it's Jeff Lemire's take on the Legion, like his Black Hammer series is a take on basically the Justice League. No, I've keep an eye on it, and there was just that recent, what was it, Dr. Spectrum, something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I forget which one it was, which felt like it was like a Starman thing, right? Like a Jack Knight Starman riff. And the more and more I see of it, I want it. So that's cool, especially now, like you said, we don't have a Legion book. So Jeff Lemire playing around in that concept could be very interesting. It's like he's rebooting the DC universe into something, some other adjacent dimension, and with everything changed, but very familiar to us. It's all connected. So, yeah. Well, see, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I know you like those connections. You like to make those connections. You're really good about pointing them out, and I'd be very curious if you were going to read Quantum Age, what you would glean from that book in relation to the Legion issues. How much Black Hammer comics would I have to catch up on before I could read that, though? Not that many, really. No? I think we're in the either late teens or early 20s at this point. I don't remember what the last issue was that I read. Okay. All right. Something to think about. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, those. Thank you for emailing us, tweeting, whatever. Responding on Twitter and elsewhere. We really do appreciate that. And if you want to send your comments so we can talk about them on the show,
Peter at thedailyrios.com, and you can reach Eric at
longboxreview@gmail.com.
Awesome. Shall we get into today's issue number 7?
Let's do that.
All right.
So issue number 7, A Choice of Dooms, written by Paul Levitz. Steve Lytle's the penciler. Mike DiCarlo is the guest inker, with John Costanza as letterer, Carl Gafford colorist, the same team that we've been seeing, and Karen Berger as the editor. Who does the cover here? It looks like Lytle, Malstead, and Anthony Tollin did the cover, which is a very frenetic cover, Peter. We got a lot of action going on here, a big fight scene.
Yeah. Do you want to do the synopsis first, or do you want to talk about the cover right away?
Oh no, let's do the synopsis.
Okay. Then we'll go back.
All right. So here's my patented Legion synopsis. The Legionnaires, who are still stuck in that limbo dimension, land on a planet they spotted from the previous issue. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Ayla, Lightning Lass, declares her remembership, I guess, to the Legion. Legion rules be damned. She then finds out that she's an ant and kind of swoons. I thought it was a cute scene. Bryn, Timberwolf, takes out his frustrations on the exercise equipment while Block tries to console him, which, I thought that was a nice little touch, characterization. Back on Limbo Planet, and this is where, in my synopsis, Peter, is just kind of like, think of when you're sitting there watching a tennis game and you're watching back and forth, your head's going back and forth. That's how I felt reading this issue. So back on Limbo Planet, Tinya discovers that the automated equipment they have encountered is creating, dun dun dun, a Sun Eater. On Earth, Jim is talking to his mom, and we find out that she is resigning as president of Earth. Also, dun dun dun. Limbo Planet, page-filling, gratuitous fight scene for a few pages. Back on Earth. Sorry. Ayla breaks Bryn's heart. Oh. On Wynath now, this time, twin science police officers investigate the death of the PI that Bryn hired. It turns out he's a descendant of someone very famous. And finally, back on the Limbo Planet, a controller shows up and then departs through a portal. One of the portals is dialed into Earth. Yay! A way home for those Legionnaires. But, oh, boo, Jan has other ideas about what the Legionnaires should do now.
Hence the title, A Choice of Doom.
Yeah. I actually had in my notes, I wasn't quite sure what they were going for in that, and I realized as I was typing my notes, I realized, I just explained it to myself, and for some reason I wasn't smart enough to get it the first time. So I will leave that at that and move on. Because titles mean things to me, and it's very important that I try to understand, okay, why did the author choose this title? Why is this important? What does it say about the issue? What does it imply? All that kind of stuff. But this is pretty straightforward. Yeah,
I agree. So what did you think of the issue?
Yeah. Well, if people might have noticed my little commentary there, in the synopsis, I enjoyed the issue, of course, as I always do. But I really found myself enjoying more like the B plots than this main story set on this limbo planet, because there's not really a whole lot going on there. It's just a lot of exposition. The antagonist, or they're setting up the antagonist or potential antagonist, I guess, in the case of this issue. But it's really the characterizations that we see in the other the scenes on Earth in particular, and the interactions between the characters that I really enjoyed for this issue. What about you?
I feel exactly the same way. I thought the main plot was felt a little flat. Fell a little flat, especially by the end. I questioned Paul Levitz, and who am I to question Paul Levitz? But I questioned some of the beats in the main plot, such as revealing the Sun Eater so early, and then
right,
and then we get all these other pages of nothing. I agree. The side plots are far more interesting, just like you said. And in an odd way, even though this is the first of, I believe, a two-parter, right? I think it's a two-parter, 2 or 3-parter. This issue felt like a Legion filler issue, whereas like issue 6, which was a filler issue, felt like it was not, So I came away not, I don't know. I thought I wasn't as enamored with this issue, even though I was really excited for it because I love the controllers. I came away thinking, okay, well, this was like a half of a part 1, and maybe the second issue, or however many chapters there are, maybe next issue, the main plot will ramp up more.
Boy, I hope so.
Yeah.
If this is indicative of what we're going to get in the second part of this, I don't know. Well,
we're both Star Trek fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
It almost felt like this entire issue was the scene that happens before the opening credits. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
by the end, you're like, oh my God, what do we do? And then it rolls, space, the final frontier, right? And then you get the meat of this. I'm talking about the main plot, not the subplots. Right. The main plot really felt like a real tease.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't count. Like I said, I just felt like we were flip-flopping back and forth between locations in this issue a lot, to the point where it was very noticeable to me, where usually I just kind of absorb that and don't really pay much attention to it. But I don't know how many pages we actually have for that main plot, as compared to everything else. But which now I want to go count those. But but yeah, I agree. Lots of filler here for this build up to this second issue, so it better pay off.
There you go. Well, what about the cover? What are your thoughts on the cover, and then the cover to Tales of the Legion Superheroes 332? That's the reprint.
I really, other than the fact that it's a big fight scene, and I'm usually not a big fan of covers that just have fight scenes on them. But it implies a lot of action. There's a lot of different colors on here, and I'm going to go very basic, Peter. I like colors in my comics, and there's lots of different colors going on here, which just pleases my eye. Beyond that, it's a fine enough cover. It depicts a scene in here that's not a very pivotal scene, but it does display that to some degree. Whereas the Tales cover, what the hell were they thinking on that one?
Yeah.
What was Steve Lytle? What was going through his head when he puts Cam here as this giant character putting his hand through Earth? I don't understand that cover, Peter.
I get what he's doing. So Chameleon Boy is just really in the forefront, and he's the closest to us, and the other Legionnaires are drifting off behind him. But the perspective does make it look, especially because Shrinking Violet is right there, and she's a character that shrinks. So it makes it feel like she's shrunken and he's big. Whereas what it really is just all of them drifting in space and he's coming towards us. So the perspective is a little, it's not a bad perspective. It's just, it's confusing. The eye is a little bit confusing.
Well, it's not even the characters in the perspective that trips me up. It's Earth in the foreground here with Chameleon Boy's hand going right through it. Because we see the planet and we see the polymer screen around it, and that's the part I don't get.
Yeah, I guess that's a little bit of artistic liberty, maybe. The danger of Earth. He can't protect it. He can't grab it. He can't hold it. He's got to make a choice of all these planets.
Except it's not Cam that does it, though.
No, and I think it's a little bit more of an artistic interpretation of the story.
And I'm being very picky about this.
Yeah,
but
I between the two of them, I'm like, I think we could have found a better cover all around. I think the Baxter issues, is, like you said, is a little busy for me. It's well executed. It's the detail on it is amazing.
Oh yeah.
With the robots, with the technology, with the powers. He does that thing that Adam Hughes does a lot, where if you see kind of like a white outline bordering figures, especially bordering figures with other figures behind them, it's kind of like a depth trick. And he does that a bunch of places on this cover. It's the Legion in action. It's fine. They're fine.
Yeah.
They're fine. I'm not in love with either
Yes.
of them. They would not be in my top 50 Legion favorite covers.
And while I'm being picky, Peter, I noticed this before, but it just popped out at me again. I talked about the colors. They got Ultra Boy's tights wrong with his leg on my cover. It's blue instead of green.
Oh, and that's your boy.
I know. How dare they?
Don't get that wrong. All right. Well, I think that's enough about the covers. Yeah, they weren't as fun to talk about this time around, but that's okay. We got plenty more to discuss.
Mm-hmm. I will say though, I'm going to anticipate that I'm not going to like the covers as much. So that brings up the point, and we don't have to belabor it here. We can discuss it as we go along. But I really enjoyed Giffen's covers in the first 5 issues. Did he do all 5 of the covers? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did.
Yep.
I really enjoyed his covers in a way that I'm not so far enjoying Steve Lytle's covers.
Maybe that's we're such Giffen heads that
yeah.
And
that's
Lytle,
what I'm wondering.
Look, I'm a fan of Lytle, and I was a fan of Lytle right from the get-go, and I think he's just different,
His
figures are just different, and I'm willing to give him space, because I always felt like his covers were something special because especially once he leaves the book, it's like, oh, we get another Steve Lytle cover, because he wasn't doing much. He did Doom Patrol at this time, or like in the mid '80s, for like a handful of issues, and he doesn't do much interior work. So, I think a lot of it's just I love Giffen so much.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to see him go.
Yeah,
it was the same thing that happened to Perez when the New Teen Titans Baxter run came out, and then Perez left, and then he wasn't doing interiors or the covers, and it was like, oh, come on. Because, they're so ingrained in our brains. So,
yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned the New Teen Titans stuff. One, because George Perez's birthday, I think, just happened in the last few days before we got together to talk, and that got me looking online, mostly on Twitter, but looking at some great George Perez covers and thinking about his run on New Teen Titans and whatnot. And I know you talked about on one of your recent The Daily Rios episodes, you mentioned Jose Luis Garcia Lopez doing some art on something. I don't remember what issue you were talking about.
That was the DC Nation issue 0.
Okay, yeah. And because Garcia Lopez did some stuff for New Teen Titans, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
And I love his art. I really do. But even Garcia Lopez pales to me in terms of New Teen Titans art compared to George Perez. That might be heretical to say, but
I know what you're saying. In terms of Titans stuff, yeah. I mean, his stuff on the Titans is beautiful. It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, both of these titles did the same exact thing. Their main, not their main art, the artist that almost became synonymous with the title at that time started the Baxter run, Giffen on Legion, Perez on Titans. Then they left. They were replaced by an artist that doesn't have how do I say this? Is more known, I think, sometimes for other things. Like Jose Luis Garcia Lopez did a lot of interiors, but he's his style guide work, he's just known as an artist's artist all around. Steve Lytle, to me, was always a cover guy for the Legion, right? And both of these artists would be on their respective titles for a little bit until they were replaced by the person who would really take over the book. Eduardo Barreto for Titans and Greg LaRocque for Legion of Superheroes, So it's kind of interesting. Both of these titles had a very similar path, and there's some fill-ins here and there, but so I think that's why, like, when I look at Steve Lytle's interiors and I look at his covers, I'm really studying him because I know he's not going to be around for long, and I don't have it in my brain of, oh yeah, the Steve Lytle run of Legion. No, what I remember is Giffen and then Greg LaRocque. Same thing with the Titans. What I remember is Perez and then Eduardo Barreto. Oh, right. Yeah. But then Jose Luis Garcia Lopez is in there in the middle. So maybe that's probably what we're reacting to.
Yeah, I think so too. Hey, since we're talking about art in the Legion books here, you want to talk about Mike DiCarlo as guest inker?
Yeah. What do you got?
So, well, I was mostly just curious what your reaction was to DiCarlo being on here, because I think you tend to look more at that kind of stuff than I do when I examine comics in general. So I did find DiCarlo. I don't know. This is the problem I always have, Peter, in talking about like the penciler versus the inker. We've seen Malstead on Lytle, and now we get DiCarlo. DiCarlo, to me, because DiCarlo did inks on some Titans issues too. I don't remember if he was inking Perez or somebody else at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But
it was Perez, yeah.
It was? Okay, yeah. So there's a very distinct... I think DiCarlo has a very distinct style, and I could really tell when he's doing something. And I see similarities here in his inks on this Legion book that I recall from when he did those issues of New Teen Titans. My critique, my only criticism that I just wanted to point out, because apparently I'm in a bad mood, is that his faces all tend to look the same. So all of his male faces kind of have the same quality, as well as his female features seem to have. So if you look at pictures of Tinya and I'm blanking on Shadowless's real name, but it's almost like they could be the same exact person, just colored differently with a different hairstyle. That type of quality. And I don't know if that's Lytle or if that's DiCarlo. I tend to want to blame DiCarlo because of the way the eyes are drawn, but it's hard to say. So I think in general DiCarlo does a fine job. It's just again, it's a little different than what we've seen so far.
I think what you're reacting to is the way he shapes faces, the way he sculpts faces by using brush strokes, and whenever there's a face where you're looking dead onto the face, there's usually one strong line down the side to delineate between like highlights and shadows, but they're all the same. Every character has the same.
Exactly.
Yeah. So some of it is, I'm sure, Lytle as well. I don't know. I'd be interested to see Steve Lytle's pencils work, and then see Mike DiCarlo's inking. I wrote down as soon as I opened this issue, oh no, not Mike DiCarlo. And I hope God he doesn't listen to this. I'm not the biggest fan of his artwork. I mean, his inking, just because of what you said. He has a very heavy hand, and not in the way like someone like Klaus Janson has, where where even though I can usually tell Jansen's inking over like Frank Miller or whoever, it kind of complements the work. And this one, Mike DiCarlo, I mean, especially over Perez, because their inking styles are way different. And I'm thinking of like, I think it's issues 3 and 4 of Crisis, where Mike DiCarlo inks. This is before Jerry Ordway comes on. And it's just, oh my God, you can really see the inking. But how, in his defense, I know Perez was probably not penciling super detailed with those issues because he was trying to catch up. So, whereas I feel like this one, I have to say though, after I was done, I was like, oh, I actually didn't mind it. I think his inking style complements Lytle a bit more than I thought it would. But yes, I do agree. There are certain tricks that he has, certain brushstrokes, certain heavy blacks, where I'm like, yep, that's this is Mike DiCarlo. Yeah.
Just wanted to point out there is on page 4. There's a shot of Ultra Boy where he's reacting to the radioactive energy that Element Lad points out, and that's where it's like, oh my God, that is so DiCarlo. Just the way the face is constructed.
Yeah.
So I don't have a real problem with it. I always find it fascinating whenever a new inker comes on for issues that we have seen someone more stable, or not stable, I shouldn't say that. Someone we've seen multiple times, over some issues, like Malstead, with these last few issues, or the last few issues that Lytle had been working on, right?
Yeah. And
so then we get somebody new doing something a little different. Right. So I just find it fascinating, and how the art is expressed through these different styles.
And I have to imagine it's a real learning curve for a lot of these creators on Baxter paper, because this stuff, when you don't, maybe the reason why he's so heavy with his inking is because on newsstand it washes out and it bleeds, but in Baxter it picks up everything. So like Ultra Boy's face, his eyes are so crisp, and same thing with Phantom Girl right up above that on that same page. Her eyes are so crisp, so there's no subtlety. And Steve Lytle's artwork he has real detailed line work. It's not brushstroke. It's very, you can see everything. So I feel like you put a heavy inker on top of that on a paper quality that just makes everything bounce. And it's like, whoa, give me some subtlety here. There's no subtlety in the shade work because it's all like this thick black line work.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's exactly it. That is the defining quality to me for DiCarlo, is the thick black lines.
Yeah. But I did. By the end of it, I thought, I had no problem with the issue. I had no problem with like following the issue, art wise, story wise.
Oh yeah. It's
real Steve Lytle got really comfortable really quick on this book, especially with this cast of characters, and yeah. So I mean, on that, it's still really nice to look at. So that's a plus. That's definitely a plus, especially because this is like return to form for Paul Levitz, where you say like the tennis match almost felt like issue 1 or 2 of this series, and certainly some of those Legion and Tales of Legion books where they just bounce around every 2 pages, every 3 pages, another scene. So they do the job well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But on that back and forth thing, it's just you're absolutely correct. Levitz does that a lot in his Legion book, but for some reason, this particular issue, it really jumped out at me. And I'm not sure why. Maybe because I wasn't all that enamored with the A plot, the main plot, and so I just maybe in the back of my head let's stay with these other characters for a while, and we keep getting shot back to the Limbo Planet.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the A plot. Let's get that one out of the way. Let's see what other thoughts do you have about that?
Mostly, mostly 2 things. One is why bring the Sun Eater back? Because I was looking at this, and I may be wrong about how things played out in publishing land at that time for DC, but I think the previous appearance of a Sun Eater prior to this issue, was in a DC Comics Presents issue from 1982. It was number 43, and so the Legion and Superman team up to fight the Sun Eater, I guess. And I kind of wondered there was a line of dialogue in here that maybe referenced that. I wasn't sure. It was really vague, but they could have been referring to some other situation. And so that just struck me, why bring the Sun Eater, and especially if this is just a 2-issue arc. Although I kind of always question, can 2 issues be an arc? If it's just a 2-part story, the Sun Eater thing is, that's a big deal. We had, to this day, there are ramifications to that first Sun Eater story because, a character died heroically saving the galaxy from a Sun Eater. Mm-hmm. They still reference it in this issue with Ferrolad's death. And so to have the Sun Eater be introduced, and like you pointed out early on in this issue, instead of it being, the big dun 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 moment at the end, it just, I don't know, it seems to underplay the dramatic sense of or the dramatic quality of a Sun Eater being in a Legion story. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, the placement of where so they land on this planet. It's a big factory planet, and they're in limbo, and they need to breathe. They need to get out of the time bubble. Ultra Boy is probably farting a lot, so they need to get
Hey.
And then they're like, what the heck is this planet? So they go and do some reconnaissance. And Tina's the first one on page 10 who finds that this Sun Eater is being built. But then we don't get her. She doesn't really tell the rest of her gang that at all, or until like later, right? Until the end. And it's like, whoa. So it's kind of like it's a tease, but that's a huge tease. And then we see at the end that, as you said in the synopsis, a controller is there. There's someone else that he's working with. And there's all these that he calls the armorer. And then there's all these doorways. So, excuse me, they're left with the decision of, do they stay because there is a Sun Eater? Or I don't even think they know at the end. They don't know that there's a Sun Eater, So they're wondering what the heck is going on in this planet, in this world. I feel like the pacing of it is weird. The pacing of it is a little weird, and I feel like by the end of it, the choice that they have to make is a little lessened because we know what they're going to do, right? Like, or we have an expectation, I should say. I have an expectation that the Legion is going to stay there and do what it is they should do, So what's the dilemma here? Oh no, she does. She does tell him. She says, "I found the factory secret. They're building Sun Eaters. If the weapons created on this planet are released, galaxies could be turned into wastelands." So, this is where I sort of go, hey, Paul Levitt, maybe the doorway and the controller and the armorer would have been a better early tease, and then Tina going, oh my God, they're doing a Sun Eater, because as you said, for Legion history, Sun Eaters are huge. That's a big deal. So the cliffhanger fell flat for me in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and since we're speaking of the cliffhanger, because the issue ends with Element Lad declaring we have to completely demolish this planet, even if it means losing the only hope we have of ever getting back to our own universe. That's the choice of dooms.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah.
So I'm of two minds of this, Peter. This is the second thing that I really reacted to in regards to the main plot, is the Legion's reaction to this. Now, on one hand, it totally makes sense that they would go nuclear. They take the nuclear option because they've encountered Sun Eaters before, and it has such an impact on them from early on, regarding Ferrolad. But at the same time, it's just like, so you show up on this planet, you see a controller and this situation and discover Sun Eaters, and your first reaction is to destroy this planet. That's really reactionary. And I'm not saying that that's, not something that the Legion often is reactionary, right? Because they're supposed to be futuristic teenagers, and I guess that's a quality of being young like that. But it just really struck me, for all they know, this controller is using Sun Eaters to, I don't know, power galaxies instead of eating them. They have no idea what's going on, and yet he's making this very combative declaration. That just struck me as weird.
Yeah, because we don't really get an idea of what it is that they're doing, and even an Element Lad says, as you said, sometimes the controllers are not bad. Maybe they're
right.
Maybe they're on the side, and I mean it could be an easy decision because they know that the planet has no life on it, and maybe that's what we'll find out next issue, that them being reactionary was bad judgment, and because I went back and read all the controller appearances leading up to this, because I'm like that, and I figured if I keep saying these are if I keep saying that I really like the controllers, it's blasphemy that I've never read their first appearances. So I actually did that, and it is very much like that. Sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're good, and sometimes they're bad again, and sometimes they're good, and so maybe that's what Paul Levitz is going to set us up for next issue.
All I can say on that is we better get some sort of part where the Legion is their supposition is wrong, or some sort of consequence to this reactionary position they're taking. As from a storytelling standpoint, that seems to me to be the only logical thing that could come out of this to make the story worthwhile to me. Right. But we'll see, I guess.
Right. Well, what'd you think of? There's a couple other things I did like about the A plot. For instance, I thought it was really smart of Paul Levitz, or it's his way to keep characterization going and show that the team has cliques, or the team has characters that are a little more level-headed than the other ones, or whatever it is. So this whole idea when they first get on the planet, and Ultra Boy's like, I'm going to use my X-ray vision, or whatever he calls it, and looks around. And Chameleon Boy's like, all right, I'm going to go do my thing too. But there's a couple times where Chameleon Boy, they almost treat him like a mascot, thinking that he's being too inquisitive or whatever, or I don't know if it's because they don't interact much, or he's a Durlin or whatever. And then he comes back, and Chameleon Boy is the one who says, oh, so you missed the huge central factory that I found, and Element Lad, what does he say to him? He goes, that a boy, it's not what your powers are, but how you use them. I don't know. There was some interesting, I think we talked about it before, why these 5 characters, where a few of them have had adventures together. Certainly Phantom Girl, Shrinking Violet, Chameleon Boy, they're part of the espionage squad. But, throwing Ultra Boy, throwing a leader, Element Lad, throwing him in there. I thought there was just some nice characterization work.
Oh, yeah. Levitz is definitely a master at that, especially with this group. Although I it seems like I'm always complaining, Peter. Maybe I should stop doing that. My problem here is, but I totally understand it from a writing perspective. The Legion is such a large cast that I have to imagine Paul Levitz has to think about them at the very least in very simplistic terms so that he can keep them all straight. Well, Joe is the hot-headed one, or that's Wildfire, but you know what I'm saying.
He's got a bravado about him.
Joe does, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but see that makes sense, because he's the third most powerful Legionnaire, depending on how you look at him.
Ooh, careful with that. Careful.
Yeah, I know.
You're gonna get emails on that one.
I'm thinking just in terms of like raw physical strength,
Sure.
So he and Mon-El seem to pal around because they are the powerful ones, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that makes sense that he would react this or have that bravado, have that way of that swagger, I guess, is kind of what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I see it. I totally understand it, but at the same time, it's like, well, does Joe always have to be portrayed this way? Because I've seen other portrayals of Joe where he's in past Legion issues and future ones, coming up. Like I'm thinking of the '89 Legion, the 5 years later, where we see Joe, and the reason I'm focusing on Joe, like I've said before, Joe is one of my most favorite Legionnaires. And we see him have a lot of depth that we don't see here. That's not to say that it's not. It's just because the plot demands that Joe do these certain things, right?
Right.
So, I just react that way because I like that character so much, and it seems odd to me that he's portrayed in this way. Much like my complaint, and I don't know if we were going to touch on this or not, but I'll just throw it out here: the way that Timberwolf is being portrayed here in the last, I don't know, several issues. Maybe we'll touch on that one because there's something about him and Ayla that I want to talk about.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But it's just I love, like I said, I love the characterization that Levitz is going for, the interactions between the characters. I agree with you. That totally makes sense. Just for some reason in this plot, this main plot, it didn't entice me as much as the other things in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, I think especially the way the artwork, they always have him standing and smiling and his fists on his hips, and but he's the one that I think in this one Joe is not out of his depth, but maybe he's looking for a simple answer, whereas I think even Tina says it right. She says it at one point that. Or Element Lad on page 10, where they talk about like let the Legionnaires with subtler powers go and muck about, Phantom Girl can go through walls, Shrinking Violet can shrink, and Chameleon Boy can become a Firefly, more or less, So, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I think that happens a lot with some TV shows, It's like they have to make certain characters act a certain way because they're trying to showcase something else with another character. But even in those 5 years later issues, I thought Ultra Boy still had a brashness to him, Like,
sure.
I don't want to say he's like Sun Boy, because Sun Boy he's a womanizer and all that other stuff. But they're the ones that are kind of like, hey, we're out there, like. They like being Legionnaires. But there was also another thing where Tina on page 10, she says, I don't know if this speaks to the time or whatever. She says, sometimes being untouchable is the best power a girl could ask for. I was like, why? Because she's getting groped so much? Is she getting pinched so much? I'm like, that's horrible that she thinks of herself like that. Or that she thinks of condition. I just thought that was an interesting, I don't know if that spoke to like some Silver Age stuff or sometimes being untouchable is the best power a girl could ask for because men are such dogs, I was like, wow, that's a real sign of the times. So I thought that was interesting. Shrinking Violet, she says, closed-in places make me feel a little uncomfortable these days. So
yeah, that's a nice callback.
Mm-hmm. Nice callback to her being kidnapped. And we get a thing with Element Lab that I don't really know because, I just don't know enough about the sequence of their powers. On page 3, he says, I can sense the elemental composition of the atmosphere, remember? And I thought, oh, that's an interesting use of his power. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had that down as well. And he also touches one of the rocks later, and that's how he just touches it, and he declares that they're processing the rocks for their radioactive energy.
Yeah.
And I thought, I agree. I thought that was just a really nice touch. Those little things like that just really celebrates what the Legion is to me.
And expands their character and obviously it expands their power base, but it expands how they use them and that it's not always about punching and it's not as generic as just going, Sun Boy has heat and light, and as I'm reading some of those Silver Age stuff. Do you have anything else about the A-plot?
No. Other than, I will say, I liked it because we get a lot of Ultra Boy.
Yeah.
I mean, that first page, that first splash, the page 1 splash page with him bringing the bubble down, it's just a nice heroic pose for Ultra Boy. I just love that.
Yeah. It was good. I do have a couple notes about the controllers, because, we're seeing the controllers here. It's the first time we're getting to talk about them in this run, and it's not like we're going to talk about them a lot in the rest of the run, but I'll just throw a quick couple of notes out here because I went back and read their first appearances in Adventure Comics from back 1967 and 1968 in issues 352, 353, 357, and 367. Now, 352 and 353, that's the story you referenced about the first Sun Eater Sun Eater attack, the death of Pharaoh Lad. It's the first appearance of the Fatal Five. So they list those two issues as being controller appearances, but they're not in it at all. Because it's not until issue 357 in a story called The Ghost of Pharaoh Lad that you find out that it was a controller that sent the Sun Eater. And he was the one that was behind the Sun Eater. So basically they're like putting as those first two issues as like a retroactive appearance, but it's really not.
Mm-hmm.
So Adventure Comics 357 is the first time we see the controllers. And what's happening is the ghost of Pharaoh Lad is haunting Superboy, Cosmic Boy, Princess Projectra, and Sun Boy, who were part of the first story with the Sun Eater. But really what it is the controller is trying to disband the Legion so he can come in and take over the universe, the United Planets. So the first time we see him, he's similar to the controller that we see here. But he has a helmet on instead, and he has a little bit of different design. I always liked the design of the controller, pink aliens and those robes and all that kind of stuff. But there was some interesting stuff that he talks about, which I was like, oh, see, the Christ is kidding me. This is like awesome. So he says, we are a race of near omnipotent beings from another time-space continuum. Our original mission in this mirror universe was one of mercy. In its infancy, our universe was ravaged by intergalactic wars which nearly destroyed us. Later, when we had matured into a super civilization, we determined to save your more primitive universe from similar catastrophes. So we controllers were sent to this universe. Each was assigned to police one sector and furnished with a weapon to use in halting warfare. Mine was the Sun Eater. As times passed, your worlds banded together to police the universe. The danger of intergalactic war passed, and the controllers withdrew one by one till only I was left. I alone refused to obey the recall order, but I had special reasons. And those reasons was he wanted to take over the universe because he felt like he was the smartest one, most powerful one being. But when I read all that, I was like, oh my God, no wonder the controllers were eventually sort of absorbed into the Green Lantern universe, because all that dialogue is just like the Green Lantern universe.
Right.
It's just like the Guardians of the Universe. You know, assigning to police one sector, having a weapon to use against, warfare. I was like, oh, look at that.
And Peter, I swear I read an issue of something that connected the controllers to the Guardians even more directly. Yeah. And, they probably just retconned it out, but I thought they had stated that they were part of the same race, and they kind of drifted apart, kind of like the Vulcans and Romulans from Star Trek.
Right, yeah. That was the Crisis. Crisis did that. Marv Wolfman.
Oh, okay.
He's responsible for
making those connections,
yeah. Because, even in that issue, when I was looking at it, there's a page of the controller like we see him in this issue, blue and purple and pink, and he's talking to one of his fellow controllers, and his fellow controller is in a red robe, very similar to the Guardians of the Universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh man, Marv Wolfman. I always knew that he retconned that, but I never knew when, and I never knew how and why. And then I went back and read this, and I was like, oh, well, there it is. It's all right there. And then in Adventure Comics 367, which was the first appearance of the Dark Circle, which is another group I really like from the Legion, the way the Legion defeats the Dark Circle is so the Legion's headquarters was destroyed by the Fatal Five, the rocket ship headquarters. So in this issue, they're building the Orange Fortress headquarters. So that was kind of cool. I've never read this issue, and I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. So they're getting all these presents from all these people because they knew that their headquarters was destroyed, and they said, here's a replica of your trophies and blah, 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 blah. So they get sent something, and it's all wrapped up in the story, that allows Brainiac 5 to defeat the Dark Circle. And it's this thing called a Miracle Machine.
Yes.
Right, which is the first appearance of the Miracle Machine. And it was sent by a controller, but by a controller who was benevolent and says, we sent this to you, but please don't use it. We honor you, blah, 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 blah. And then that Miracle Machine shows up, many times. And then I think one of the next times we see a controller is in that limited collector's edition Legion story that's the wedding of Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad. Again, because they use, I think they use the Miracle Machine in that. But then that's the book that, I don't know if you ever read that, but that's the one that says that the Time Trapper is actually a controller.
Yes, that's right. In fact, I just read that because it's in one of the hardcover collections that I got some months ago.
I've never read it. I only read a synopsis of it, and I was like, what? And then I looked up some artwork, and I was like, son of a bitch, a controller was a Time Trapper? And They kept that for a while until the Crisis retconned everything. So I thought that was just cool. Like even though I didn't like that main plot, it kicked me off into this huge controller tangent. And we'll see him in future Baxter issues. I think they show up in The Wanderers. They show up in Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern run. They show up in Final Crisis. And they're in current issues of Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too.
Yeah. So that's
back to their old tricks of trying to take over the galaxy.
Right. So that was that. That's my little controller tangent. Because I'm sure maybe some of it will come up maybe next issue.
Mm-hmm. Since we're talking about that, there was one more thing I guess that I wanted to mention about that like the end scene between the controller and his armorer.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little thing. So it's, these little things that I love about what Levitz and Lytle and company are doing. The controller and the armorer are talking, but we have no idea what the armorer is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I really enjoyed the fact that we don't know, because for me we talked about how it kind of this whole main plot just kind of fell flat for us. But because we don't know what the conversation is really about. I mean, we could kind of guess from the subtext here what's going on a little bit, but without knowing it directly, to me, it kind of ramps up the tension a bit, just by not knowing what this character is saying. And I love that even, because there's even a panel here where Chameleon Boy is playing around with their telepathic earplugs to try and adjust them so that they can understand it, but it doesn't, it doesn't work, or it's not, they don't give enough time to try and figure out what this armorer is saying. But I like when the Legion technology, as advanced as it is, still has its limitations.
Yeah.
And they still have to, be detectives or at least be space cops, as it were.
And probably adding to the whole, whatever it is, we're going to find out next issue. We heard you talking. Well, did you really hear us? Did you know what we were talking about? Okay.
So that's all I had as far as that main plot.
Yeah, same here.
All right. Can we talk about the other stuff, the good stuff?
Go ahead. Where should we go first?
So the first thing I have is the Protean Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And what page was that on? Flipping through real quick. Here we go. So page 5. So there's this crowd scene in Metropolis. It's just a few panels on this page, and you've just got this Protean representative demanding citizenship, full equal rights, and then you get these people reacting, citizens of various cultures and planets here. It's funny. It's funny and it's not. That, I don't know. This seems to mirror recent events in American culture at the moment.
Huh.
I don't know. I found it funny how something that was published back in late '84, early '85, whatever it was, it still has resonance, at least reflectively today.
Yeah. I wonder how long that whole Protean right, wanting rights for their race. I wonder how long that's been going on, and maybe was treated as a joke before, and this is Levitt saying, yeah, this isn't a joke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I, just like a lot of the stuff that's coming up, I don't know where this is leading to and what the end result is. So I'll be very anxious to see what happens here, because this is just a real quick out of the blue moment that he's throwing in. Here, hey guys, here's this new subplot I'm throwing out here. I'm sure we'll be touching on this, down the road. So I just found it really fascinating.
I wonder if it could just be atmosphere too, as a way to show. Because I feel like that scene, which is only half a page, is what people used to criticize the 5 years later Legion for, where they felt like the Legion was too dark, and they felt like that shouldn't be happening in the 30th century or 31st century or whatever. And I feel like this is Levitt saying, but it does happen. And it will happen because people are people. And, right. It happens with the Durlans. And we've already read that there's spillover from the Great Darkness Saga in terms of trusting Daxamites.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it could just be, it's almost like a scene shift too. Like we're back in Metropolis and it's our way of going outside and then inside to the headquarters.
Right.
And Giffen does that a lot in the 5 Years Later Legion run. There'll be this random story, or in Ambush Bug, when he writes Ambush Bug, there's like two people on the street just talking, and it doesn't mean anything but just his way of commenting on whatever it is he wanted to comment on at the time. And you're right. I mean, the one woman even says, honestly, won't they ever be satisfied? I mean, I've heard that far too many times about certain demographics, people saying that about certain demographics, and it's always like, ooh, you just want to shove that sentence right into that person's mouth.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Hey, since we're on this scene, I wanted to ask you, Peter, because I know, like I said, you really like to delve into the details and connections of things. That crowd scene, is there anything that pops out at you? Is there anything that has some sort of connection to anything else?
The only thing I think, I didn't write anything down, but as I look at it now, there's a guy in the back that kind of looks like, isn't that Ultra Boy's old costume on the top of the first one? Or no, Colossal Boy's old costume.
Yeah, that's like I saw that as well. It is reminiscent of that. Yeah. But what about the guy on the right with that weird bald spot and hairdo? Mm-hmm. It looks like Interlac, like 3 characters or so of Interlac on there. I don't know.
No,
I looked up the Interlac alphabet, and it looks like 4-1, and then I don't know. I don't know what that third character is. It's so weird. It's like an Interlac tattoo on his head. Anyway, I whenever I see Interlac in the backgrounds of scenes, I try to figure out what it is they're saying.
Yeah.
Because usually it's just like a label, it's signage. But this guy with his stuff on his head, it's like, what is that? Why did they throw that in there? Probably just to be kind of weird, I guess. I don't know.
Let's go to another smaller sequence, page 11-12, between Colossal Boy and his mother.
Yes, that's the other one I have too.
Yeah. I think in your recap you said that this was the first time, or that this is the first time he's finding out that she's not going to be president anymore, but I think we knew that already.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
We did know this, but it's just, I don't know. It seems there's something about this scene. Yeah, because he says, I still can't believe you resigned, Mom. I was finally getting used to you being president of Earth. Although, in real timeline, she's been president of Earth for how many years?
Yeah.
Seems like a long time to me, but, comic book time is always compressed.
Yeah.
But no, mostly I think my comment was, this is, of course, setting up a new president. We've already talked about that, I think, to some degree already, how somebody else is going to be coming in. And so they're just continuing that on. What I really focused on here, though, was, again, just this little tiny scene here. And I'm wondering why the focus on this, similar to the guy with a tattoo. So she's packing up, and there's a Legion call from Chief Zendak, and Colossal Boy goes off to answer that call and help out with we get a tie into the previous storyline, because we see some of the villains that had escaped, and so they're gathering up the last half dozen of the supervillains organization, and so we see a bunch of them here in the hollow vid or whatever it is. But at the bottom of page 12, there's this scene where Jim's mother is talking about, or reflecting, I guess, on her son, the Legionnaires, what will happen to them. But it's the way that it's depicted that really drew me to it, because this is probably just an artistic way of getting through the dialogue that we get. But she touches this. Oh gosh, what do you call that, Peter?
Like a brooch, pendant.
A brooch, thank you. Yeah, pendant. That's the word I wanted. She just kind of touches that as she's talking, and then there's a close up of just her mouth, and then finishing off the scene, it's this equipment in her room, I guess, but her in silhouette in the background. I just thought that was a weird, interesting way to get through that dialogue. Like I said, I don't know. It seemed very odd whenever there's a focus of imagery like that. To me, that signals something. I'm just not sure what it's signaling, other than, as she says, the Legion's luck has been so poor recently, and they'll need more of it than ever, I think. And so that's, the way that these 3 panels are colored. Like I said, she's in silhouette. Her reference to their poor luck. It's just dark times are coming, perhaps.
It's very Giffen-esque, those last 3 pages.
Yes. There you go.
Panels.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And I don't know if maybe some of these smaller scenes are spillover from an earlier issue where he did lay out the artwork, or it's just Steve Lytle channeling his inner Giffen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's kind of what. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. I really don't have much to say about other than, we've seen this beat before with R.J. Brand. I think one of those early Controller issues, one of those early Adventure Comics issues I read, also had this very strange, idea about the Legion as a concept and how they're being used by the United Planets or something like that. I was, even back in 1967, they were hitting those same beats, which I thought was interesting. Excuse me. So I feel like this is just a little subplot that it'll mean something soon, and it'll mean something later.
Mm-hmm.
And the later will be bigger than the sooner. But I can't. But yeah, I just liked it because it was. I like that because it talks about it's like the Legion as a concept, not just a team, and that the Legion has family. And I think I really like the supporting cast sometimes more than some of the Legion members because it's this expansion. It makes it feel big, like the X-Men and like the Titans. It's a big universe of characters, And it was nice to have a little quiet moment because I feel like a lot of the other scenes were more about the drama.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, this was my main point. You're right. It does touch on the eye for an eye storyline because almost in no other way do any of these characters talk about anything that happened in the first 5 issues. Like, we don't even get a mention of, we sort of get a mention, a very obvious mention where Block is saying something like about, I don't know, like the team is a little lessened at this point. I fear the gain of one, maybe the loss of another. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't Block. But Cosmic Boy has some ideas, but this has been going on for a while about expanding the team, and he's bringing Wildfire into it now in this issue. But nobody has talked about the death of Karate Kid,
right? At
all. So it was kind of nice that at least they were touching on the Legion of Supervillains. But, But I guess maybe the point of telling Lightning Lass that she's an ant is, even when there's death, there's life. So I guess maybe that's the trade-off.
Yeah, I guess you can't get too maudlin with the book back then. People reacting so strongly to a teammate's death. It's just rolls off their back and on to the next adventure.
Yeah.
Speaking of death, just one more quick scene, and then there's the whole Ayla thing that I want to get into. But that's I mentioned in the synopsis that we find that PI, or the PI is discovered dead by the 2 SPs, and then we find out that the PI is a descendant of the legendary Batman of Earth. Wow.
Yeah.
the other SP says. I just thought that's a weird kind of drop-in thing, I guess. I get, but as a fan of DC Comics and you're reading 31st century Legion lore, to throw in Batman in here is just kind of a cool thing, I guess. But I don't know. I found that scene, despite the fact that this PI, whom I liked in the previous issues and wanted to see more of, is now dead. But I thought it was a charming little scene, especially between these 2 science police officers. They also seem to take this. I mean, they're cops, and I guess that's maybe par for the course. But they seem really nonchalant about the fact that this guy's sitting there dead in front of them.
Do you know what the outcome of all this is?
No, I don't.
All right.
So okay, that's great. That's what I'm hoping for, is that we get something beyond this.
Yeah, we will, in a very big way. So,
good.
The first time we saw the private detective in issue 1, where he's on Winnath and looking at Ayla, right? He goes to his, his office or whatever, and that's where we learn that Timberwolf had set him on the case.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure in Interlac we saw W investigations or something like that, or maybe even BW. So reference Bruce Wayne, without going back and check. There's some allusion to the Batman thing even back then. And then, as you said, we find out here that he is a descendant of the legendary Batman of Earth. And this will play out. I won't tell you where because it might spoil it.
Okay.
But it does play out. My thing with this is those two science police, okay, so they're twins. They look an awful like William Shatner. Like during,
Yes. And I've been trying to place that. I'm like, this looks really familiar to me. Yes. Now that you say that, it's like unmistakable. Wow.
And then that gives something to the way they speak. So their names, Garrett and Morkel, I was trying to think, is that a reference to something? Was T.J. Hooker on it at this point? Like, why do they look like Shatner? Because their faces are just way too. I've seen too many likenesses in comics to go, that's not a normal face. They're drawing them to make them look like someone. So I just don't know why or where.
Well, it's good though that you were making those connections, because I was going to ask you that directly, if there were something to these two science police officers, because they get 2 full pages of screen time, so to speak. Lots of dialogue back and forth together. I hope we see more of them, but I'm guessing maybe not.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even in one panel, one of them is his face is illuminated in yellow from the screen. But if you're gonna go down that rabbit hole, what color tunic did Kirk wear? That's probably reaching a little too far, but
yeah. So I mean, I guess, really, it's just to say, hey, there's a mystery, and it involves not only the 30th century but the 20th century, and that's not a throwaway that he's a descendant of Bruce Wayne. So
okay,
yeah.
Well, obviously, the family connection is lacking if he's going to be murdered like that. He's no Batman.
He's no Batman.
Okay. Can we go to the last? This is my last main thing that I wanted to talk about with this issue.
Okay.
And that is Ayla and her interaction with Bryn, with Timberwolf.
Right.
So, wow. So I mentioned with Jim going off, Colossal Boy going off on this other mission. So we get back to that with the Legionnaires gathering together, some of them, to go off and do that mission. And Ayla says, wait for me, people. I'm ready for my first official mission since rejoining. And then Timberwolf confronts her, says, hold on. And she folds her arms. What do you want, Bryn? He stammers a little bit. And then I love that. This is on 17. Yeah. That long panel on the left showing the two of them, with Bryn in the background. He's kind of shaded. But the angle of this is showing him as further down on the panel than Ayla, who's in the foreground. I love the construction of that, because, here's this poor guy. I mean, he had his faults here with this whole situation, I will admit, but he's trying, and he's trying to understand, and Ayla is just very turned off by him. Very cold in her reaction. He says, "Why didn't you write or call or even tell me where you were? You left the Legion and vanished out of our life." She answers, I gave you a chance, Bryn. I asked you to come with me, help me find myself. You thought the Legion was more important to you than our relationship." And he says, but you decided the Legion was important too. "That's right. After searching my soul and learning a lot about myself, I had to do that without you. And now there's no trace of love left in my heart." I thought, wow, after all these years of being together, these two, as I recall, they were shown as very much, more so on her part, very much in love with each other. Because Bryn was off, in his doggy-looking days when he had the pointy hair and whatnot. Was that Cochran that designed him, or?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that look that they for some reason decided to do away with.
The lone wolf days.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I guess my problem with it is that in what I've read, I don't understand how she got to this place. Yes, he did not come with her, and so yeah, she feels rejected. But to go from that feeling of rejection and the way that they had previously felt about each other, and I know there's that whole bit between Bryn and supposed bit between Bryn and Saturn Girl on the planetoid, on the asteroid or whatever it was. I don't get it. I don't understand why she would react this way, other than it's a plot development that for some reason that Levitz is pushing this character towards. So I just found it a little heartbreaking on Bryn's behalf, I suppose.
Oh wow! I was going to ask you. So I was like, who do you side with? And I don't think that's the right question, but and you say Bryn.
Well, in this scene in particular, because he obviously still loves her, wants to be with her. Hired a private investigator to find her because he had no idea where she went, what she was doing. Now, granted, he could have, looked for her himself. I know they kind of explained it away that he doesn't know how to be a detective, but he could have done something.
Or wait.
Okay.
Or he could have gone with her.
Well, of course, yes. but beyond that, it's like, his home is the Legion. I don't know. I'm not going to try and justify his action there because it's totally, you're totally right. But what I'm not getting here from Ayla is, how do you get from A to B just because he didn't go with you? It's not like he cheated on her or rejected her first. I mean, in a relationship way. Why this reaction, I guess?
I mean, we saw the A to B. We saw the A to B in issues 1 through 6 of all the stuff she went through. And then beyond that, I sort of feel like that original argument where after the Great Darkness Saga, where she's like, I got to get out of here. The Legion is a bad place. The Legion is a bad place. You need to come with me. Can you, or however she worded it, come with me so I can figure this out. If he was such a strong proponent for the Legion, which clearly he was, his priority was the Legion, right? More so than their relationship, because he was like, I can't go. I got to stay. I sort of feel like maybe she would have come to the conclusion that she did in issue 6 earlier had he been with her. And they go and make a life for themselves, but then, being a hero, you don't get a day off for being a hero. Maybe something would have happened and he would have been by her side, and then he could have said something like, look, this is why I believe in the Legion. And then she said, you know what, you're right. I don't know, it could have gone many different ways. Some of the letter column stuff was really interesting about this issue, because I feel like there were a lot of readers who weren't happy with how rough Ayla was. So like I wrote down here, one of the letter columns suggested that back when Ayla left, they were both committed to the team. So she was making Bryn decide against his loyalty to the team. But I would counter that with, again, I'm saying this in hindsight because I haven't read a lot of issues with her in it. But when you take these first 6 issues, I don't think she ever really was committed to the team. And that's why she had to leave it to come back to it. So I feel like I don't think it was – I think it really was her having a crisis of faith and, you know, reaching out to him, and he said, no, I need my family. And I don't know about you, but I would have been like, all right, well, peace out then, you know, and which is what she did. And then she's being brought back into it. So, like, I love that opening scene where she's like, I don't care about the rules. I'm going to be part of this team. I just went through this whole, you know, I crossed the Rubicon or whatever it is they said, and I need to be part of this team for my reasons, you know, and that reason doesn't include him because that's a life she doesn't have anymore. And I have a lot of sisters. I don't know if you have a lot of sisters. I have a lot of sisters in my life. I have 5 sisters. So,
wow.
Yeah. And my oldest one, and I have a lot of female cousins and things like that. My oldest sister always says to a lot of the younger girls, she says things about, and this is generalizing, but in her situation and in their situation, it's very true, where women want to move forward and men are fine with sort of being where they are in relationships. And,
sure.
And that's a generalization, but you know, in their particular situations, a lot of that was true. And I feel like this is a real big example of that, where she needed to find something and he was fine with being where they were at. But they weren't fine. They weren't fine back during the Great Darkness saga. And they're certainly not going to be fine now. So was she harsh? Was she cold? Was she rough? Yeah. But I think some of this is also Levitt's knowing that he's going to do something with Timberwolf too. And maybe this is me jumping the timeline, as they say. Cause he's been such a hound dog. He's been such a smacked ass. Like he's so mopey and who hires a private detective? Like get off your balls and go find her, you know? You know, he's in the gym in the opening sequence, right? And he's like, you know, I gotta work out. Don't interrupt my workout. I'm not like one of those, what does he say, once a month Legionnaires that are just here, you know, save it for the once a month athletes. You know, it's like he's dissing the other Legionnaires. No, what you're doing is you're hiding.
Right.
So, I was all like, brava, Lightning Lass. You tell him what for.
Well, see, okay, but since you brought it up, you know, because I totally agree. He was hiding there, but he comes out of the shadows, so to speak, to confront Ayla about this. And she totally just shuts him down. There's no discussion. There's just, no, you rejected me. I'm now rejecting you. We're done. And I guess what I want from a storytelling standpoint is a little bit more. I want that drama to be teased out a little bit more. I want some discussion between the two, and maybe we'll get that. I don't know.
Closure.
I guess maybe some closure, but at least more of instead of just a quick. We're just going to be professional from now on.
Yeah.
You mentioned what the journey that she's been on these last 6 issues. And I see your point, but there was no part about that I saw on the page that had to do with Bryn. And I'm not saying that it has to be, I'm totally failing the Bechdel test here, so to speak. I'm not saying that she has to be everything about the guy in her life. It's just, they did have a relationship though, and she totally cuts him out.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wonder, this can't be over. But at the same time, I also know where in the future timeline where she ends up relationship wise.
Right.
And so, I mean, to me, that's all perhaps Levitz is setting up, is that, they're going to move on. And now that you've said something about Bryn, I don't know if you're teasing me or just that's just a supposition on your part, but
no, there's a storyline coming up.
Oh, okay. So there's something else coming up. All right. So, a lot of this is really just plot driven in terms of getting the characters where they need to be for the stories that Levitz and company want to tell. But it's just, I don't know. That scene really struck me. There was an opportunity here to have a discussion between two characters who were in a relationship and now they're not. And it was just kind of shut down very quickly, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to go back and read those where she left the Legion, because I think I read it for last issue, but I don't quite remember all of them. But when she was leaving, I think she had at least 3 different scenes, 2 with him and 1 with Saturn Girl, where it was all about, her decision to leave and her decision to leave Bryn.
Maybe I just need to go back and reread those.
Yeah, you should read them. They're short, but you should read them because I feel like we had 3 of them. And I don't think she owes him. Again, some of this too, I wonder if it's, it's 1984, 1985. The Lightning Lass is fitting a certain role that a lot of movies were putting women in, this sort of rough, I can be tough as a man kind of thing, whatever that means, So I think it's a lot of that. And I think we know where this story plays out. I don't feel like this, and I don't think this is what you mean by it, but I don't think this scene is a subplot. I think this is really how Paul Levitz just wanted to handle their reunion. Yeah. We know what's going to happen with Lightning Lass, but I don't think this is like I don't think this is like that sort of demonstrative about it. But I just think this is what he wanted. He wanted it to be like this because he felt very strongly that that was all Timberwolf was allowed. That's it. That's all you get. That's all you get for not joining her, for not ever wondering where she was. And if she's being tough this whole issue, she has stuff to prove, So, yeah, this was I knew this, I wondered about this scene because I was surprised at how much the letter columns, it was always male writers. Oh, she was so rough on Bryn. Oh, poor Bryn. I was like, poor Bryn?
Well, I'm glad I conformed to expectations then with the readers back then. Now I feel really terrible. I'm a terrible human being.
No. No. I just, what's funny? I probably felt that same way when I originally read it, but that was because I didn't know that she was gone for a year. That as a reader, you know what I mean? Like, and then we look how much we talked about her in those first 6 episodes. Like, I think had I thought that way originally, I would have been turned around because I just feel like her character has become more important than him.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So,
I know. I guess the last 6 issues with her being built up in the way that she was,
right.
I don't know. I just had a lot of compassion for her, and then I don't know. It's just the way she's treating another person, a person, a very important person in her life previously. I don't know. It was just a weird dichotomy, I guess. But at the same time, I can, that makes sense. People are not one layer.
Yeah.
You will have different reactions to different people depending on the situations, right? So, that in that sense, it develops her character a lot, or at least shows a different facet anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess I felt some compassion towards Bryn because he was really trying, he's like the sad sack guy that loses the girl, and he's really trying, and for whatever reason, she's rejected him. So I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm projecting. Maybe that's what's going on here, Peter. I'm projecting a little bit from past experiences.
Yeah, and it could be Paul Levitz's way of, this is how he thinks characters like Lightning Lass and Shrinking Violet need to be written in 1984, right? As opposed to the way that they you might treat those characters today, or even in 1990 or in the 2000s or whatever.
Yeah, and considering the characterizations of both of those two female characters under his pen, there's a lot of similarities there. That's food for thought for later, I think.
Yeah. But as someone who does have 5 sisters, I've learned very quickly, you do not deny or turn down when a woman really has something important to say or want you to do. Romantically, business-wise, person-wise, sexual-wise, whatever. Don't turn it down. There ain't going to be a round 2.
But believe me, I guess this just shows how dumb I really am, because I still continually relearn that lesson after almost 30 years of marriage.
It made me laugh. That's why that scene made me laugh. I think the other thing I have, here's some random comments. So this was actually from issue 6 that I didn't bring up. I forgot to bring up, or I didn't see it in my notes. That the group of 5 that are in that limbo, they're often referred to as Legionnaires Lost, which I just thought was interesting because we would get 2 titles with that same thing, Legion Lost. So, it's not, I'm sure it's not like somebody ripping off this storyline, it's just, I thought it was interesting. Legionnaires being somewhere else seems like to be like an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
The only other thing I kind of took notice in this issue during the dialogue, whenever it was like a bunch of Legionnaires, I don't know why, I was kind of curious about the seniority of these Legionnaires. So, like the Legionnaires that are on this factory planet, Phantom Girl has the most rank. She's been there the longest, followed quickly by Chameleon Boy. Then you had some time, and then Shrinking Violet, Ultra Boy. Shrinking Violet and Ultra Boy were around at the same time, and then Element Lad was like the earliest, or whatever, however you want to say it. So I thought that was kind of interesting, like the pecking order and how they talk to each other because of that pecking order. And it also came out with that scene with Lightning Lass where she's like, I want to be on the team, and Colossal Boy's like, hey everybody, let's be cool, because he's been around the longest. Some boy, well, obviously Cosmic Boy is one of the founders, and then you had Colossal Boy, and then you had Sun Boy. Lightning Lass was after Sun Boy, and then Dream Girl was, either at the same time or right around when Lightning Lass was around. So again, whenever the dialogue comes up, it's interesting to see, like, who really are the elder statesmen, who are the ones that have been around longest, and how do they react, as opposed to some of the ones who haven't been around, and they are all like, rah, rah, Legionnaire, So that was just I was just doing that more for my own enjoyment.
No, I can totally see that, though. I'm looking at that scene where Ayla's declaring her being on the team again, and and the way that the dialogue progresses across the panel, with ending with Cosmic Boy saying, "So would I, Sun Boy," and which leads to, them moving on. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
But that does bring up something that I've often kind of wondered about or thought about the Legion is, you have all these different Legionnaires who have been leaders. They were elected leaders, and now they're not the leader anymore, right? So, how does that work? Given the cliques and I don't know, just the seniority, like you mentioned. How do these people interact, and how do you not undermine the current leader, and all that kind of stuff. But they don't touch on that. It's just kind of, they all seem to mesh pretty well, no matter what.
Right.
Unless we need some sort of a situation where they're at odds with each other, and then suddenly things aren't working so great. But it's the politics of the Legion. We rarely get into that, but it's one of those undercurrent, barely touched on topics that I just find fascinating about this piece of work.
Right. And Cosmic Boy, I think I mentioned before, he's still talking about this like expansion thing, and I don't think this is the first time we get a definitive answer from the creative team, but in the letter column, they do say starting with issue 13, they're going to start juggling the membership. So that's something to look forward to as well.
Yeah. New blood.
Yeah. And then that's it. Those are all my notes for this issue.
All right. Yeah, that's all I have. Oh, I have a couple notes though. For the Tales tie-in, issue number 320.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that it? Yeah, issue 320. This is the Magpie Complex. So,
yeah.
I totally forgot, Peter. There's a scene in here. Sorry, I'm going to go back to Bryn for a second.
Okay.
Because there's a scene here where he's kind of creepily in the exhibit of inactive Legionnaires, and he's being observed by the antagonist of the story, the thief Magpie. And I don't know. I guess in my mind this is placed after the scene that we saw in issue 7 here, but I don't know. I'm not really sure of that. But Bryn's there, ogling the statue of Lightlass. And it ends with him just kind of sitting down next to that statue, looking all sad-eyed and stuff. So I think my reaction to what's in issue 7 was also informed by this scene, and so but like I say, it's kind of creepy too at the same time, which that would be interesting if they played with that a little bit more, but I don't think they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But mostly in this issue, Peter, I just wanted to get your reaction to the 2-page spread of the Legion headquarters that they have in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, yeah, schematics. I love in comic stories schematics.
Yeah, and that exactly. It was in story. It wasn't just like, here's this nice, neat little 2-page thing for you readers as an appreciation. It's part of the story. I thought that was really cool.
Right.
Yeah, that was it from there.
Yeah, and it was nice, and I think it was the first time that I realized, because I think they hint that the top part of the Legion headquarters is actually a ship. It's like a giant ship. So not just one of their regular ships, like the whole top portion of the headquarters is a ship.
Okay. Yeah, I don't. Okay, yeah, I'm not seeing that, but
let me see.
Oh no, it says storage convertible to emergency living quarters, hangar deck and cruiser maintenance area. Oh no, you're right. It does say that. Unconfirmed design elements indicate that top section of headquarters is actually detachable, space-worthy vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
With ion engines and thruster.
Very cool. Did we ever see that in use?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. It's like the Captain's yacht in Star Trek until which movie was that?
Insurrection,
yeah. One last thing in this issue. There's a backup story here, and I just wanted to point it out because it features one of your favorite characters very prominently.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to get your reaction to that.
Gigi Cristiano. Yeah, there's like this triangle between her, Sun Boy, and Colossal Boy, and it really was, well, in light of the Timberwolf Lightning Lass relationship, it's Gigi getting back at Sun Boy for treating her like she's disposable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of have to you've touched on this a little bit already, but you kind of have to look at the bulk of Levitz's female characterizations and kind of wonder maybe a little bit about his attitudes towards women, perhaps.
Do you think
or am I going too far with that?
Do you think it's positive or negative?
I kind of think it's not so positive. I don't know.
Really? Because I see it as them coming to the forefront and saying, you know, as I read these Silver Age and 60s Legion stories where the girls can't do anything because the guys don't let them, or they're always fainting, or treated as objects more than Legionnaires, mm-hmm. I sort of feel like this is them taking ownership, you know?
Well, yeah, definitely with this story with Gigi. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of, you know, just other, I guess I'm thinking of other characterizations or maybe, you know, like I said, with Lightning Lass and with Shrinking Violet, maybe, I don't know, the way he portrays the female characters changed over time. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm totally throwing these things out here without having really examined it a whole lot. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it really challenges you have to put yourself in 80s mindset, right? And all these long-term Legion readers, you know, who the female characters in the 60s and 70s, you know, were they really as invested personality wise? And they certainly mm-hmm. rarely at the forefront, and they were like one note, and right. he's giving them a little more personality. And sometimes, if a personality is something we're not used to, or it comes across a certain way, it may feel like it's a negative way, but it's like, well, why can't they have those? Why can't Gigi be running around on Sunboy just like the way Sunboy is running around on Gigi, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, it was a weird backup tale. It's a little weird. It was like, oof, little bit of a Silver Age throwback when the Legionnaires would act mean to each other for no reason. Or just because they're trying to flush out a secret or something, you know?
Right.
So it had wisps of that kind of story, but, yeah, it was an interesting little backup. Now, the one thing about that issue, the Tales issue, that kind of does relate to the issue we just read. We don't talk about the Tales book usually too much, but, it may be you may not have noticed it, in that regard, to the issue 7. So the opening page of the entire issue of Tales number, what issue is it? 320?
320, yeah.
And they're doing a tour of the Legion headquarters. Do you see the interlac that is on the tour bus?
Mm-hmm.
And it says, can you read it?
Well, it says Ollie Queen, right?
Yep.
Ollie Queen Tours?
Yep, Ollie Queen Tours, Ollie 3.
3, yeah.
Yeah, and that's who that guy is you can see him right there. He's got the blonde hair and the green tunic. So we've seen a descendant of Bruce Wayne, and now we can make a supposition that this may or may not be a descendant of Oliver Queen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just keep that in mind.
Nice little oh, wait. It comes back? Jeez.
Just keep it in mind. Yeah. Seems, I mean, and that guy's been shown a lot. He's been shown a few other times. But just keep that in the background.
All right. I thought you were going to go with the appearance of Universo in this issue as it pertains to a future storyline.
Yes. That is there. Yeah, that's there too. Which in a very obvious way, which I was sort of surprised by. Because he was mm-hmm. Universo is the one that hires the Monitor to hire the Magpie to go get this chip in the Legion headquarters, but then he's like, never mind, there's other plans in effect. And I wrote, wow, that's a super subtle subplot that won't play out for years. But the more immediate one is the Bruce Wayne and the Ollie Queen thing. We'll get to that first.
Picture me intrigued, Peter.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Good. That was fun. I think I said it before. I'm in uncharted territory. I don't remember how this story ends. I think once I read it, I'll be like, oh, right, that's how it ends. But I'm looking forward to the wrap-up.
Yep, me too.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we hear from more people about this issue or future issues. We always want to hear your thoughts. We're getting a couple people saying that they're reading this stuff for the first time or finding collections, which is always cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good. What's interesting is I know this series stays on a pretty even level in like year 2, year 3. But I forget year 1 sometimes. And some of the later years, I'm like, how are they going to play out? I don't remember, but I'm excited. I'm excited for this first year of stories that I don't really know too well. So I'm looking forward to the next issue and then the next issue, and then we'll find more subplots that was like, yep, that'll play out later. And, can't wait.
Yeah. In fact, that was one of my points in my notes was just the appearance of these subplots and the continuation of little bits, of little pieces, over many issues was one of the things I really loved about the Levitt's run on the Legion in the various titles that he did. And reading this issue really brought that home to me, given, like I said, we talked about this to death, but all of the B plots in this story or in this issue. I just really dug those, and I can't wait to experience more of that. So looking forward to what's to come.
All right, let's say our farewells.
All righty. So if people want to send their feedback, their thoughts, their comments about this issue, this episode, or anything coming up for future issues that we will talk about, so that we can prepare our thoughts for those. You can always email me at longboxreview@gmail.com. And Peter, where can they contact you at?
Peter@thedailyriost.com.
So thanks everyone for listening, and we will talk Legion later with you for issue number 8. Come back for that, please.
Awesome.
Peter, shall we do our sign off?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Long live the Legion Project Podcast. All right, Peter. Thanks so much for getting together with me and talking about this, and I will talk to you soon.
You bet. Talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.